SHRM statistics say that sexual harassment, bullying, and mobbing in the workplace is up 40%. I don't know if it's the hostilities of the overall environment of the world right now, or it's just that it's maybe more convenient or easier because it can be done on the sly. I don't know. But the purpose of this training isn't to teach you how to do that. It's to teach you to look for the signs that if it is occurring to you or a coworker or something like that, you can identify it and bring it to our attention. Because what Rare Patient Voice doesn't know, we cannot correct. All right, so what we're going to cover today, we're going to cover legislation, and we're going to define and understand workplace harassment, sexual harassment, bullying, and mobbing. We're going to take steps to correct it. We're going to figure out how to report it, and then we're going to take a quiz. And then after this, the leadership team will stay on, and I will do some additional training for them. Okay. Before I get started, this is what I really want you to take away from this. I reiterate this several times because if it's important, always remember that the employee who's doing the harassment towards a victim may be intentional or may be unintentional. I know that, in history when we do things, people will say, oh, well, that's just the way Stu is. He's just sarcastic. That's just his sense of humor, or he says it with a smile, or it gets everybody laughing. It doesn't matter what the harasser's intention is. The only thing that ever matters in all four of these situations is how it makes the victim feel. Courts have decided about this. We carry that out. You can tell me 6 ways to Sunday how you just didn't mean it that way and it was taken the wrong way. But if an employee comes to me and believes this is the way that it's going, that's the way that we have to see that it's going. So remember, it isn't how you're doing it. It's how the other person feels it's on the receiving end, or persons. It can be more than one person. Okay. Title VII of the Civil Rights Act, there's 3 different ways, and there's Maryland actually has a state law specifically about sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression, and several other states do, so we have to address that. But the main crux of these laws came from Title VII, which you can't ask questions when you interview, you can't harass people because of the same things, family or marital status, age, race, sex, including pregnancy. The EEOC is really hammering on people who are discriminated against while they are pregnant, while women are pregnant. Your nationality, where you're from, your religion, political affiliations is actually coming into that, and disability. Now, the ADAA is the American with Disabilities Act, and that in like 2014 really ramped up its game. And it just didn't include like physical attributes that like, when they had to put the wheelchair ramps up or any kind of disability like that. They've actually included now mental illness. They've included alcoholism. So the ADA is actually what my old boss used to call on steroids, AAA. But we really have to be careful about what we're talking about when we're talking about people in these regards. And then the ADEA is the Age Discrimination Act, which people over 40, which people like to refer to as boomers, and maybe even another group of people can fit into that course. And then, like I said, sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression isn't a federal law, but it is in the state of Maryland. It is in the state of California. It's in the state of New Jersey. So more and more states are passing these laws. And then there are counties that can pass laws as well, prohibiting this kind of conduct. In the state of Maryland, there hasn't been any specific county because the state law is so broad. But since we are a Maryland-based company, we're going to abide by the Maryland law that we do not tolerate this kind of behavior. Okay, we're going to define the definition and the differences of each of the 4 categories. So harassment. Harassment is behavior that appears to be disturbing, upsetting, or threatening and can be applied by aggression, pressure, or intimidation. Now, that doesn't mean it has to be in person. That could be via email. If you don't get this right, I'm going to write you up. If you don't get this right, whatever. Harassment can manifest in many different ways. So the next slide, I'm going to give you some statistics about all of what we're talking about. And there's tons more out there. These were just what I found to be very interesting. Victim of harassment are 6.5 times more likely to change jobs, and more likely than not, the employer will not know why they are changing jobs. It's easier for them to change jobs and stay anonymous and not bring it up than to tell somebody and have an investigation. 70% of women were verbally harassed, and 51% of women were touched without permission. Out of all the harassed individuals, 63% of women did not file a complaint, and 79% of men keep the issue to themselves. I don't know about you guys, but I have personally been sexually harassed twice in my professional career as a human resources person. So if it happens to people in human resources, there could be two reasons for that. First, they didn't know that they couldn't do it, so they did it, and then we do the training. Or they know they can't do it, but they do it anyway, knowing that 70% of the people, or that 63% of people won't report it, or 79% of men won't report it. Women have a 60% chance of experiencing harassing. So if there are 15 women on the call, more than 7 of you have experienced some sort of harassing in your lifetime statistically. And 1 in 7 women and approximately 1 in 17 men have sought different job opportunities. Like I said, they're not to come out and to tell a boss or an owner of a company or the HR department that they believe that they're being harassed or bullied or mobbed takes bravery. And when somebody is harassing or doing any of that to someone in the workforce, they are actually seeking those people who might be a little bit more timid or a little bit more shy. They just don't randomly say, you know, you look like a great victim today. They look around the room and they size the room up and they say, who could I potentially do this to and get away with it? So it is almost a science with them. They know how to do it. They know when to do it. They know when not to do it. So if it's happening to you, or you know of someone in our work environment that it's happening to, please be brave and come forward and tell somebody, because I can't fix it. Wes can't fix it. Pam, Ben, Tiffany, no one can fix it if we don't know about it. And the unfortunate thing is that usually when this kind of an issue comes up, what happens is nobody says, well, you know, I think I'm being harassed, so I think at 4 o'clock on Friday, I'm going to go talk to Leanne and see what she can do for me. No, what happens is that the harasser harasses the victim to a point where it just explodes. And then all of a sudden you have a major fire drill on your hands. And sometimes when people work together in an environment, people usually do know. They just don't say anything. So it isn't a surprise to the people on the floor or in the office or in the work environment as it is to the people who are running the business, because they don't do it when we're around. They're more secretive about it, and they're getting away with it. They're feeling emboldened. They're doing it more. So we have to really be aware of what our roles and responsibilities is as great coworkers and employees to eradicate this. So what is harassment in the workplace? Harassment is unwelcome conduct and becomes unlawful when enduring the offense of the conduct becomes a condition of employment. Say my boss comes to me and says, well, you can keep your job if every Thursday you go to lunch with me. It's called a quid pro, and we've heard that a lot in the news lately. And what a quid pro quo means is that if you give me something, I will give you this in return. If you do this for me, you can keep your job. And the conduct is severe or pervasive enough to create a work environment that a reasonable person would consider it intimidating, abusive, or hostile. So if you're going or experiencing something like this and you are brave enough to have a confidant that you are talking to, and someone who you believe is rational, and they say, wow, that sounds like so bizarre. How are you dealing with that? Is that a reasonable person that would think that you are working in a harassing environment? So you don't have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt, like in a court of law or on a police show or something like that, that they are actually doing it. All I have to do is be aware of the situation and conduct the investigation, and then the truth usually does prevail. And according to the EEOC, harassment can be, these are not Leanne's rules, these are not Wes's rules, these are not Rare Patient Voices rules, these are the federal government's rules. These are what keeps people in court with getting cash or going to the EEOC or going to the DLLR, the Department of Labor License and Regulation in your state. So in discrimination, it can be based on any of the three criteria we talked about, and it can be verbal. It can be when I call you names. It can be when I could be calling Wes a boomer. According to the ADEA, I'm not allowed to do that because people over the age of 40 are also in a protected class. So if you're calling a coworker grandpa or grandma or something like that, you better have their permission because that is technically discrimination. Physical touching. I know that we don't really have that problem here, so I'm not going to elaborate. Visual, your screensavers. I remember back in the day when they used to have the Coors Light women or the Chippendales guys on their workstations or in their lockers. That's not acceptable anymore. I actually have a friend of mine who has vintage 40s pinup girls on his company phone, and I question if that wouldn't be visual harassment to a woman who thought it was. Threats. Are you overtly threatening someone? If you don't do what I tell you I'm going to do, I'm going to call the police. I'm going to call your wife. I'm going to call somebody. Offensive jokes. If it's not just a silly comical joke anymore, I really would recommend that you stay away from them because you don't know who in a room could be offended by it. Intimidation, that could be leering, that could be staring, that could be any kind of intimidation, physical. Could it be retaliation? If we start a harassment investigation and someone retaliates against the person who filed that complaint, that is a terminable offense. So be very careful when someone has filed a complaint and maybe I've pulled some people in for an investigation, never to call that person and say, what do you think you're doing? I'm coming, you shouldn't be doing that. I'm going to do da 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 da. Retaliation in itself is usually more of a terminable offense than the actual harassment because it's blatant, because it's after the fact. Or if you're retaliating against somebody because you think they might file the complaint. So that's another big no-no. Ridicule or mockery. Can you believe that she wears that garb, that religious hat to work on those screens every day? I can't even imagine. Name calling, insults, and put downs, or interfering with work performance. And this is huge too. And since you guys work virtually, this could actually be more prevalent in your workplace. If I'm working with, say, Laura in marketing on a project, and I omit a very important component of a project that we're working on because I want to and because I want her to maybe leave, that is considered harassment. Because I am interfering with her work performance, and that could cost her her job. Or if you're doing this kind of work, it could be costing you your job. So I just want you to be aware of all of the things that happen.
Hey, Leanne.
Yes, sir.
What about could a compliment be considered that? Again, it's how far you take it. But you're telling somebody they look attractive that day. I could maybe cross the line. I don't know.
Well, I don't know about anyone else. I like to hear that I look nice because sometimes I put more effort into it than I think I need to. So I guess what you can say is, if you're telling somebody that, you can say, after you say you look very nice today, if they say thank you in return, if they're not comfortable with it, the people who are actually receiving the comments or anything like that can straight up say, thank you for that compliment, but it kind of isn't setting well with me or something like that. So unless someone says something, I say it to strangers on the street because, you do appreciate when people take the extra time to look nice. And, it's an individual thing. I would continue to do it, Wes, in a very, as long as you keep it short and sweet. You look very attractive today, or you look that outfit compliments, if you say something like, wow, not everybody could wear that outfit. Is that a different way to say it that means something different? Right.
I actually disagree, Leanne.
Okay.
Because I have seen this happen in my other life, and that was the complaint that he's hitting on me, and we ended in HR, and I just, I know the guy, and he said all I did was comment, that they look great today. You look great, and he said, but there was a potential history there too between those two.
Correct. If there's a history there, I would avoid it altogether. Yeah.
Yeah, or
and I appreciate what you're, Kirk. I appreciate what you're saying, because some people will use that as a door opener.
Yeah.
But it's sort of like, if Wes, if you don't say it all the time and it's just a once in a while thing, is that consistent? Is that predatory, or is that just saying that someone looks nice today? What do you think, Kirk?
You know what? Anymore, I'm so gun shy with all this stuff. Just say a word.
I know.
I'll make a comment if somebody I think they're expecting. I don't say anything. I just, I just sit in the corner, say, "Let's go to work," and then you get accused, not here, but then you get accused toward the end of just being uncaring, hard, what. But
I know. So
you don't know. Some people are walking around looking for. I mean, not rare patient, but some people are looking for a reason. They don't like the jobs. They're looking for anything they can to start something.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually have a question. Let's say Tiffany and I are at a conference and I haven't seen her in a long time, and I say, "Oh gosh, you look really great. Your hair looks fantastic."
Mm-hmm.
She could take that in the wrong way from me, right? So should I not say that to somebody?
No, you should definitely say that. But in the same sense, if someone that I don't talk to on the regular comes up and says, "Oh, wow, you look great in that outfit," that's weird.
Yeah. Right.
But we have a relationship and you're complimenting my hair. You're not saying like, "Wow, you look great. You've lost 25 pounds and looking super curvy." I think it's in the delivery and your relationship with the person. And
agree.
If you talk on a regular, like it would be, Kirk wouldn't come to me and say, "Wow, Tiffany, that outfit looks really great on you." Like it's just not something he would do. So I think it's just relationship, what you already have is super important.
Mm-hmm. So I guess, and my recommendation would be, if someone is saying that to you and it makes you feel uncomfortable and you don't want to say anything to that person, come to me and we can have it stopped. And I would go to that person and say, "I appreciate what you're saying, but this person isn't feeling comfortable about that," or something like that. There's many ways to address it. Just like in everything else, human resources is never black and white. There's more gray than anything. Gray should be everybody's favorite color. Because when you deal with people, 99% of us don't have those black and white hard edges. We're kind of in the middle somewhere trying to find our way. So, and I guess another interesting thing to say would be, if you said that comment to like your mother or your daughter or your husband, how would they feel about that? You know what I mean? Because if you're accused of sexual harassment, you might eventually have to go home and tell somebody like that you were accused of it and we put you on administrative leave. So you should be really thinking about, how is this being presented to the rest of the world? And would a jury of 12 reasonable people, and I put my air quotes up, reasonable people, I don't know 12 reasonable people, I don't know anymore, how would they feel about it too? But by the same token, if you do feel like you're being harassed and you don't tell us, you're not giving us opportunity to correct any issues that might be going on. So I always say to err in favor of the good stuff. But, if I do happen to look phenomenally fabulous one day and nobody says anything, am I going to, I don't know. It's all a personal thing. And in today's world, these laws aren't black and white either. There's a lot of gray area. We do an investigation. We be getting as closer to the truth as we could. So if it sounds bad or you think that you're questioning what you're saying, then I would stop. How's that? And leave it up to you guys. I'm not going to tell you either way what to do or how to behave. I'm just giving you guidelines.
Sounds good.
So Tiffany, you probably look fabulous today. How's that sound? It looks fabulous today. I don't know. And I would mean that with all sincerity. And maybe another thing would be, do you mean it with sincerity, or are you trying to mean it some other way, like sarcasm or dark humor or something like that? What is your intention? Okay. So 81% of women have experienced some form of sexual harassment in their lifetime. That means if there are 15 of us in the group, that's about 13 of us, 12 of us that have. Only 1% of sexually harassed victims will ever confront their harassers. They won't say stop. They won't say, you're making me feel uncomfortable. They won't do it. And my goal here today is to tell you that if you are, and you don't want to talk to us first, you would like to see if you could handle it yourself, you can say, I don't care for the way that you're talking to me, or you can say stop. And at Disney World, when someone says something that's inappropriate to another coworker, the other coworker actually says, now you and I both know that you're not able to talk to me that way. And they usually can settle that since they have 60,000 employees on the ground every day. If they don't empower their employees to take care of it, they would have a lot more issues in their human resources. So that's a given rule with them. And the average cost through lost productivity for employees who we don't know they're being harassed is $22,500 per year. So if we're a group of 100 and 6 of us are being harassed on an annual basis, that means that $90,000 of Wes's bottom line is going straight out the window because of lost productivity. I call in sick, or I don't focus on my job, or my projects don't get done, or I leave. So we have to really be consider the side effects of harassment, not just to the individual, but the individual is the most serious consequence of all. Types of sexual harassment are any communication of a sexual nature. It's staring or leering when you're in person, looking them up and down. Some of these are in person, so we won't have to worry about these. Unwelcome touching, kissing, rubbing, or hugging. Before COVID, I was amazed at the clients that I would go into contact with and they would hug me. It didn't bother me, but I don't have a personal space area per se, but some people might. So if you're going to do something like that, you might want to say, can I give you a hug? And they might say no. And you say, okay. And you have to be fine with that. That's okay. People rubbing people's shoulders, that could be considered some kind of a dominant thing. Kissing, touching, just don't do it. Asking for more than one date. I know that when we work together in a group, the general rule is I don't want anybody to be a Don Juan or a Don Juanita in the workplace and hit on every single person that comes through the facility, which has happened. But if you want to and you want to ask them out on a date, that's fine. But if they say no, no means no, and don't do it again. Standing or blocking someone's way, intentionally brushing up against someone, making sexually offensive jokes, remarks, or gestures, posters, screensavers, we've been through this, or insulting questions. I can't tell you in my career the number of sexual harassment complaints that have been filed, and the person was texting them. So why are you putting that in writing? Because all I have to do is take a screenshot and you're basically done. So it happens, and it's crazy how people do it and they don't think that they're going to get caught. But the easiest thing for me to figure out is if you're doing it over text. And if you're reaching out to people when it's non-working hours for non-working issues, you better be sure that you're talking and they want to communicate with you. Okay.
Leanne, I remember an incident my wife had many years ago. The guy called and left a message like that on our voicemail.
Right.
I mean, so people don't always, I don't know, their brains aren't always working. So
no, and unfortunately, this training is required in several states. Maryland is not one of them, but it is a best practice. It's easier to take the insurance policy out and we train you once a year than to not do it. But maybe people just don't know. But as of today, everybody knows, so nobody gets to leave a voicemail or shoot anyone a text. So does anybody have any idea what third-party sexual harassment is, or any kind of harassment? Sexual harassment. Kind of implies something, but it really doesn't tell you what it is. Here it is. Say that we're all on a conference call, and since we're waiting for the speaker to show up, Pam and I engage in a conversation about something that we saw on a Sex and the City episode last night. If some people on the call find that conversation objectionable, even though Pam and I are kind of the only ones having the dialogue, someone who witnessed that can come to HR and say, hey, you know, the other day we were doing that thing, and they kept on, and I found it to be very uncomfortable. So don't think that if just because someone isn't involved in the conversation doesn't mean it isn't appropriate. Okay? The bully. The bully is a master at what they've done. They've honed their craft usually over many years. It's a persistent pattern of mistreatment by another person or others in the workplace. The bully can have a mob mentality that they'll go after different people. Tactics can include verbal, nonverbal, psychological, and physical abuse, as well as humiliation that is ongoing and leaves the victim feeling trapped or defenseless. And what can happen, not in your setting, but on a physical site, is that some people will actually join the bullier to bully that employee because at least they won't be that victim today. So it is prevalent, and it takes on a mob mentality sometime. Workplace bullying is driven by the bully's need to control individuals. And like I said, it's initiated. They choose the who, the when, the where, and the how. They do things that interfere with other job performances. They withhold information, just like I said. The mob mentality, just like I said, it undermines legitimate business interests. And the bully's agenda takes priority over the workplace. And it's similar to domestic violence, but they are on my payroll. I tell people all the time, when we hire people to do an expected job for an expected salary. Being bullied in the workplace isn't included in that salary. Being harassed is not included in that salary. There is no place for this in our workplace. Bullying is not a single incident of unreasonable behavior. Maybe I lose my mind and I have an attack of delusion or something, and it's a single incident. I might be requested to apologize or to reassess where I am or things like that, but usually a single incident isn't bad. Appropriate disciplinary action is not bullying. Having a difference of opinion in the workplace is not bullying. Rounding with your employees, or taking a ride along, or calling it. If I call Tiffany today and say, "Hey, I'd like to shadow you on your job today so I can see what you're doing," that's not bullying. That's being inquisitive and seeing if I can help you with your role. Promoting, transferring, or reassigning an employee from a management perspective is not bullying if it's for positive business outcomes. Routine coaching, feedback, and counseling is not bullying. And individual expression of style and preference, if the expression is not meant to intimidate, is not bullying. But that's why we don't wear T-shirts that say things that could offend people and things like that. I have an example of a woman who wore pink to work every day. She was pink, 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 pink. She didn't, file folders were pink. Her office was pink. She lived in pink. And her manager hated her because she liked pink. That could be construed as bullying, because we worked in long-term, and when the state, long-term care, when the state would come in, her files were immaculate. She could put her hands on anything that had happened in that workplace for 10 years. That was her job. Not wearing pink was a non-issue. And then think about this, roughly 1 in 4 American workers have dealt with bullying in their career. And this was in 2014. Recent surveys say that could be actually roughly 2 in 4 Americans now. But we do not pay people to be bullied in our workplace. And there actually is a Workplace Bullying Institute in Canada that surveys and monitors all of this stuff. They take court records, they file EEOC cases, and they're tracking all of this stuff. So there really is a place like that. The next one is mobbing. Mobbing is a form of bullying that occurs against an individual by a group. Say a new employee comes in and they're great at what they do, and their coworkers aren't liking it because they perhaps may be outperforming them. It has happened to me. Subordinates or superiors. I had actually, I worked for a company, and the owner's wife, I don't think particularly cared for me. And one of my employees in my department, she wanted my job. So of course she didn't care for me because she believed I took her opportunity, and I was mobbed in my workplace. And what they do is they gang up on you. They go, they rumor, they innuendo, they BC when they're emailing people to try to get you caught and stuff. They intimidate or humiliate. They discredit and isolate you. And it's usually, this kind of behavior usually is, it's malicious, it's non-sexual, it doesn't have anything to do with anything except the fact that you are usually a higher performer. Identifying harassment, bullying, or mobbing in the workplace, it's like we've said, and this is just because too, For the state of California, I have to do this presentation for an hour. So I review some things just because I really want you guys to understand that I have to meet a time limit. Offensive jokes, targeting a specific individual with unwelcome pranks. I know it looks cool when somebody goes on vacation and they put Post-it notes all over their cubicle, but do we do that with everybody who goes on vacation, or do we do that to just one person so that we embarrass or humiliate them when they come back? We have to really think about what's motivating that. Again, staring or leering, any kind of communication that embarrasses or humiliates, any type of intimidation. Sabotage, omitting things, physical attacks. I've worked in places where cars have been keyed. Intentional and repeated isolation, unwanted criticism, and fault finding. Are you going out of your way to find things wrong with their work? Sexual advances, refusal to acknowledge and assist in a specific individual, threatening behavior, inappropriate contact during working hours or outside of working hours. Starting or repeating rumors. Are you making stuff up and telling it to one person and it starts in that rumor mill that because you're trying to attack their work or violating personal space? I just pulled this off of a recent MSN poll. It's been in the last 3 months, and it said, have you ever experienced a hostile work environment incident? 49% of the people said absolutely yes, and 18% maybe somewhat. That's 57% of people who work feel like they've experienced it in their workplace. And I don't know about the other 2%. Maybe they haven't figured it out. And this was a British study. They kind of discovered it or figured it out what it was in Britain, but they say that unfortunately it is on the rise in the United States. It's just that in the United States, nobody has actually underwent a study to figure that out. And usually it happens in workplaces that are poorly organized. It could happen because we work so far away from each other and we can't see who's doing what to who and things like that. Some more interesting statistics. 37% of workers, or 54 million people, believe that they've experienced workplace hostilities. I can't drive these numbers home enough. The EEOC received over 28,000 complaints of harassment in 2017. And in 2017, look at this number. $164 billion the EEOC has recovered for people who have alleged and been able to prove that they were harassed or bullied. They go after their recovery for sick time utilized. It's just, and it doesn't even include, it doesn't even include the cost of the sick time that they're away from work, the turnover costs, the decreased productivity, and all of and the anguish that the employee has suffered. And then when you really start to think about sexual harassment or harassment, you got to really remember to think about Me Too and the not here, because I don't know about you guys, but Ellen is a great example. Here she was on top of the world, had the #1 TV show for 20 years. And then after everybody didn't work together anymore, people were like, this isn't really a great place to work. I feel like I'm being intimidated. I'm being harassed. Or how about the Washington Commanders? The federal government is going to launch a sexual harassment investigation into a private person's business because they think it's that prevalent. So don't think that it isn't happening. It just hasn't been disclosed or discovered yet. How we can eliminate bullying, mobbing, or harassment in the workplace. First of all, we create policies and establish a code of conduct. We are in the process of doing that right now. Training, we train everyone, supervisors and employees. That's happening today. We're going to monitor behavior. We're going to, if you see something, say something, report it. I'm giving you all the signs of what can be happening around you. If you see something, say something. If someone consistently talks about control and exerts it, watch them. Most of the time, it can be just perfectionists that want the job done and want it this way, and they have that single-mindedness. But if someone wants to exert control or force over someone, it can show up. We have an easy notification system. You can talk to me. You can talk to your supervisor. You can talk to Pam. You can talk to Wes. Just talk to someone. Confidentiality. Unfortunately, sometimes I keep it as confidential as I can. But if you tell me that there are witnesses, I will go talk to those witnesses and I will share with them that I am conducting an investigation and here is what I'm looking for. I won't go out into the lunchroom and say, hey, Nikki just filed a sexual harassment claim today. Good for her. We won't be doing that. But it doesn't mean that there won't be ripple effects, because then if I talk to someone else she told me to talk to or he told me to talk to, that they might say to me, I don't know a lot about this, but I know someone who does. And I follow every single lead until it's exhausted. I want to be able to substantiate or not be able to substantiate a claim of harassment. I just don't say, that's okay, whatever happens, happens. Look for it. Recognize employees' behavior or distress. Are they calling out? Are they performing in a way that they normally don't do? Is their work suffering? Investigate. We will never ignore a complaint. We will address it. Probably that day, I will start the investigation and I'll have it closed in a reasonable amount of time. I don't believe that something like this should linger. I will document some more. I will request statements and writings. I will request that you print and sign and date them, just so if something else happens, I can produce that to the EEOC or to an attorney or something like that. And I will always follow up with the person who is alleging the complaint. I might not tell you the specifics of what we are going to do with the employee that you allege the complaint with, but I will tell you that we follow through. This is the expectation. And when you file the complaint, I will also reiterate about the retaliation to be aware. If that happens, see me right away. And if it happens after I conclude the investigation, I say it again to make you aware that if this starts to happen, you need to come back to me and let me know, because I don't know it's happening if you don't tell me. The effects of the behavior in the workplace for the target, all of these will be the same except for like the last couple of lines, and some of them aren't. The target, they get stressed, anxious, poor performance, absenteeism. They might be more agitated. They might be have more conflicts with their people around them because they don't know how to deal with it. So they're just kind of lashing out. They can be physically ill and they quit. With their coworkers, if their coworkers are seeing it and not saying anything, they can incur the same traits as the person that's being targeted, but they can actually feel resentful to the organization, thinking that I should be doing something about it. But if I don't know it's occurring, I can't fix it. But they sort of resent the fact either they're being a party to it, they're witnessing, or they believe we're not doing anything about it. So coworkers, if you know it's happening, please let me know. With remote workers, the bad part about this is if it's happening to people who work remotely, there's no escaping it. How do you work in your office at home, shut your computer, know that you're feeling this, and then walk into other areas of your house and feel confident anywhere? And then with the company, it has the same effects throughout the company. It ripples the teamwork, it increases turnover, and it decreases profits. And if a case is taken to the EEOC or an attorney and the plaintiff wins because we didn't do anything about it, that could really decrease your profits because the average sexual harassment complaint costs the company $50,000 if it is won, if we don't act. So that's why we're doing this training for you today. If you believe you are being harassed in any of the categories that we talked about, first of all, feel free to tell the harasser to stop. You can ignore the harasser event if you think that it was a one-off, or do you think that if you ignore it, it'll go away. But in my experience, how often do we ignore things and they just go away? Never. They just get worse. What I really request that you do, though, is if you are being harassed, is to resist the temptation to attack back, because that can lead to a he said, or she said, sort of a issue. And I can't substantiate a claim because something else happened. For you guys that work from home remotely, document it if possible. Save that email that's troubling. Save that voicemail that's troubling. If it's ongoing, tell me the who, what, where, when, and how. And especially if you are a remote worker, save those, or don't save them and say, you know what, this is what has occurred. I can get you these documents and I want you to help me stop this. Just let me know. And like I said, the best thing you can do is to be brave, because you have to tell somebody, because we can't fix it if we don't know. There are many ways you can contact us. I've gotten letters in the mail to the corporate office that come to me. People handwrite it down. People email me. People call me. People text me. They can do that with anybody on the leadership team. My one request, though, is if you know it's occurring and you file a complaint and you do it anonymously, that's really awesome. But by the same token, it isn't really helpful because it limits me in the scope of what I can investigate. I can't go to every single person at Rare Patient Voice and ask them if they're aware of something that's happening. If you say to me, this is what I know, and this is who's being targeted, and this is something else, and you give me some facts so that I can start to perform an investigation. But the hardest and the most distressing for me personally are the anonymous, because somebody's trying to help, but I don't know how to help them because they didn't give me enough facts. What happens if you choose not to report it? It spreads. The harasser or bullier can get more emboldened and make more people in their group exposed to it. It usually never does stop. It only stops when we intervene and stop it. It escalates. If they're doing it to you, they could ramp up their campaign against you. It usually comes to a head and becomes public knowledge. If you let me know, I can maybe eliminate some of that public knowledge. But like I said, in a non-remote working environment, more people than not know what's going on, but nobody fixes it. Organizations can't fix what they don't know. And if you believe that you are being harassed and you don't give us opportunity to fix it and you go straight to an attorney or straight to the EEOC, which you can do, but usually they will say to me, they will say to you that you didn't allow us the opportunity to remedy the situation, and they will push it back down to us first. So just so you know, going outside the organization could sound like a better idea, but ultimately it can hinder your objective. Why don't people file a complaint? I can't even imagine coming home and having to tell my guy that I believe that I'm being sexually harassed at a workplace. I couldn't fathom that, or my mom, or anyone I loved. So the fear of just that, or the fear of reprisal from the harasser, coworkers, or leadership. I can't believe that you did that. Why would you do that? You know that's just the way they are. Well, it doesn't matter if that's the way they are. It matters how you feel about it. They're afraid what is going to happen after they say something. They're afraid that I am going to go out there and I am going to do my job and I am going to conduct an investigation, and the person might be fired. But you are not being compensated for that kind of treatment. You were compensated to do great work, not to put up with this other stuff. They don't want to look like a troublemaker. Maybe in the past, when they were a kid, they were bullied on the school grounds, and they went and told a teacher, and they were looked at as a troublemaker, and they're not going to do that anymore. I can't imagine how embarrassing it must be to know that I can come into work every day and somebody's going to treat me like this. They don't trust that the company will act. I promise you, the company will act. And they don't think it's their responsibility. If you're witnessing it or you're observing it or it really isn't affecting you, it is your responsibility still. Could you imagine if a football team went to another city and the other team's players were harassing someone on the team? Could you imagine a team like that putting up with that? That's what the team mentality means. Not on our team, not with the people that I have to work with every day. I want to protect them from this. We have to think about this as everybody's responsibility. What do you do if you have witnessed or have been harassed, bullied, or mobbed? You file the complaint. Straight up. Any way you can, file the complaint. What happens after a complaint is filed? The supervisors will learn that if someone comes to them and says that they believe they're being any of the above, they should notify me. An investigation begins. Witnesses are interviewed, statements are taken, privacy is protected as much as possible, outcomes are discussed, employees are placed on administrative leave. If it happens in a workplace where we work together, I might have to put the alleged harasser on administrative leave to get them out of the workplace to complete my investigation. And what that usually means is that if I put you on administrative leave and I could substantiate that, yes, you did this, I will not pay you for the time that you were away from work. Now, on the other hand, if I put you on administrative leave and I could not substantiate the claim, I will pay you for the days that I took you out to do the investigation. That's what that means. Statements are placed in employees' files, and then we get to do more harassment training the next week because obviously something didn't stick in and we're doing it again. Like I said, retaliation is never tolerated, never, 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 and may lead to more disciplinary action up to and including termination. What is retaliation after a complaint has been filed? It's engaging in verbal, physical, or emotional abuse. It's spreading false rumors or fabricated stories to disparage the employee who filed the complaint's reputation. It's threatening to make reports to authorities like immigration status, contacting the police, doing things like that, or anything else that could do to discourage another employee from filing a complaint. Say, I had a group of women. I was working in an organization, and it was a husband and wife that worked there, and then there was 5 other women in this department, and the husband was harassing these other 5 women, and these women wouldn't say anything because they were protecting the feelings of the wife. Now, I know that sounds incredible, and I believe that it happened for an extended period of time, but they were willing to put up with the behavior to save the feelings of the wife. And the only way I found out about this is we had an intern who was working with us, and on her last day, she came into my office, and you know that she had been waiting 3 months to tell me this, and she waited till her last day so that she wouldn't have to face or feel any of the retaliation that could have happened. And she told me the whole story. And when I went to those other women, I was so shocked. These were not women that I thought would have to endure this or thought they needed to. And none of the other women were aware that they were each individually being harassed separately. He didn't do it to the group, so he was kind of like cherry picking the people that he was doing it to. And of course, you know, the straw hits the camel's back, everything explodes, we do the investigation, and then we have to terminate the husband. Because I can't even imagine them going home that night and having that dialogue. And I don't even know if they would even still be together to this day. All right, time for questions. Does anybody have any questions about how we harass people, how we prevent it, who to go to, how to file the complaint, anything?
I mean, the only thing that occurs to me, and it came up several times, is if at all possible, if it's happening, tell people to stop. And, you know, and I get it, you might be in a position where you don't want to do that. But then again, tell somebody, report it. So it's kind of like a lot of us have to take adverse events training, right? And the answer is always the same. When you see an adverse event, you have to report it, you know? So it's never ignore it. Never try to stop it if it's happening to you. Again, if somebody's doing it inadvertently, you know, making a comment, but if you're not comfortable, best thing is like, I don't know. Hey, thanks. I appreciate where you're coming from, but that doesn't make me comfortable. Please. I mean, I think most people will say, got it. I wasn't trying to do it. I won't do that again. So hopefully that'll stop it in its tracks.
People who are unintentionally doing it will stop right away because it was never their intention.
Yeah.
People who are intentionally do it will try it in a different way. And then if that one doesn't work, they might try it in a different way because you're not saying anything. You can be saying it 5 different ways and it still means no. But sometimes you just need to say, you know what, I'm done with this. I'm just going to tell somebody else and they can deal with you. All right, we're going to take a quick quiz. Okay. Expecting this is for, these are just true or false or multiple guess. They're pretty simple. So expecting an employee to do their job is considered harassment. True or false?
False.
Okay. Repeatedly calling an older worker over the age of 40 boomer is discrimination.
True.
Yes.
I do have a caveat to that. I don't know what happened to that slide. If you're younger than 40 and I call you kid all the time, Or you feel like I'm disparaging you by saying you Gen Xers, and I'm talking to you like that. That's not harassment based on the ADEA or age discrimination, but that can be a form of bullying or harassment. So if I'm calling you kid because I might be older than you, that's not acceptable either if the kid is taking it to say that I'm lesser than you because I'm younger than you. Just to make that clear.
There are so many people in my past that can come back to me for harassment.
As long as they don't accuse us of that, we'll throw you off the boat, Kirk. So
my favorite was of my Sarah knows him well, Les Huff. My favorite was "You old fossil."
Well, let's hope they don't get the training then. How's that sound?
Well, if he does, he's in heaven getting it.
There you go. There you go. He's looking down on you. Maybe that's karma.
Yeah.
And if you have someone who is like I worked for a gentleman years ago up here in Westminster, and he was just an equal opportunity. He owned the company. He had no people skills. So he was like an equal opportunity. I call him an equal opportunity asshole. There's just not another word for it. But if he's not discriminated against you because of your sex or your religion or your national origin or anything else, he's just being an asshole. But that doesn't mean that he shouldn't have been talked to. But since he was the owner, who was I going to talk to? Yeah. But I eventually left because I was tired of the treatment, right? So, okay. If an employee alleges that a visitor is harassing them, an investigation is not needed because they are not a company employee.
False.
That's not true. If the FedEx guy is hitting on my receptionist and she tells me, I get to call the FedEx's boss.
All right.
I have to stop it. It doesn't matter who's inflicting the pain. If it's to my employee, I have to correct it.
Yeah.
So if the FedEx guy comes to my house for something I ordered, I get to tell Wes to then go deal with him?
No. If it's on company time and like, well, if you're a receptionist and you're getting FedEx deliveries every day, you're stuck in that space. Right?
Send me a message. I'll see what I can do.
But if my last package got rained on, can you?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Geez.
Okay. If you see an employee bullying another employee, you should do nothing. If it bothers them, they can report it. Tell someone who can investigate the situation, or tell your coworkers during your next break.
Tell someone who can investigate.
Exactly. Examples of conduct prohibited in the workplace include emails, texts, or voicemails that are considered offensive, threatening, intimidating, or insensitive, grabbing, hugging, and kissing someone, and violating their personal space, or all of the above.
All of the above.
Correct. Retaliation after a complaint is filed can include spreading false rumors or fabricated stories to disparage the employee's reputation.
True.
Correct. True. Workplace bullying or harassment is not appropriate disciplinary action, having a difference of opinion on work-related concerns, or A and B.
Both.
Both. Correct.
Both.
Okay. It doesn't matter what the intent of the harasser was or is. It's always the effect of the behavior on the victim that is important.
True.
True.
Correct. Asking out a coworker once is usually not considered harassment.
True.
Correct. Mobbing doesn't happen in American workplaces. True or false?
False. False.
When filing a harassment complaint, you can only file it with your direct manager, can file it with any manager in the company. You should not file a sexual harassment complaint. You should be able to handle the situation.
Second one.
Good.
A or B.
All right. Well done. Well done. Well done. Does anyone have any questions since we completed the quiz?
No.
Okay. If you see something, say something, and don't be afraid to get involved or get us involved, because that's the right thing to do.
And everybody send an email to Leanne saying, I completed this training with the date, and we'll put that in the file.
Correct.
Thank you.
And
Okay,
it's good news. If we have to take training like this, it means we must be growing. right?
That's correct. That's correct. Now, if the leadership team would just like to stay on this call and everyone else can go back to what they were normally doing, that would be great, because I can just slide right into my next part and then we can be done.
Terrific.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank
You guys have a fabulous Friday and a happy
Everybody.
weekend.
Aloha. You too. Thank you.
So we've trained everyone. Now, this is a leadership edition. These are things that I am required to tell you to keep you out of trouble. This is basically to give you a little bit more information, what happens, and then what happens if you find out about harassment and you say nothing. After a complaint has been filed. Okay, so after a complaint has been filed, what I usually do is I will talk to, if they come to you, listen to them, be compassionate, don't have an opinion, and then say, I'm going to call Leanne, and call Leanne. Because we do not pass go, we do not try to handle this on ourselves. This is a very delicate and difficult situation. And since the employee has been brave enough to come and tell us what's happening in their perspective, we have to give them every opportunity to tell us. So please, please, please don't think that someone comes to you and says, and think that you can handle it, because this has been years and years of my professional development to do this correctly. I also want to tell you that if any employee comes to you and says, I think that I'm being harassed, bullied, mobbed, or sexually harassed, and they tell you not to say anything, should you not tell me because you think you're doing that in confidence? I'm asking a question. If someone comes to you and says, I think I'm being harassed, but don't tell anybody, should you come to me?
Yes.
You should. Yes, because courts are now saying that if you do not tell somebody and an investigation is not done, that you must be colluding with the harasser, and then the victim can not only sue Rare Patient Voice, but they can personally come after you. And if the average victory for someone who has been sexually harassed is $50,000, you just doubled their luck, and you need to come up with $50,000. And in most instances, if that happens, Rare Patient Voice will not pay your attorney's fees. Rare Patient Voice will not pay the $50,000. And I just want to tell you this too, if we get a little bigger and we have to comply with FMLA, and someone comes to you and says, I want to request FMLA, you should never say, we don't have the time for that. We don't have the bandwidth for that. We're not going to do that. You need to also come to me with things like that, because now in 2 states, what they have said is if that manager stepped in the way of them getting FMLA that they were qualified for, you can personally sue that manager. So that's why I do this training separately without the group, because I really want you to know that there can be serious ramifications for you if you do not act. Okay. Yes, Laura.
So, Leanne, if someone comes to you, and I don't have any reports right now, but
Sure.
I've managed people before. If somebody comes to you and says something has happened, I'm just telling you, I don't want you to tell anyone else or go to HR. I completely understand that I would have to tell you or Pam and Wes, but what do you say to the staffer? I mean, is it appropriate to say, gosh, I understand this is a sensitive issue. You have my full support. At this time, though, I have to tell Leanne and Wes and Pam, or Leanne or HR or whatever. Like, I have to. There's no choice. Is that correct?
Correct. Okay. What you can say is, unfortunately, as much as I'd love to respect your wishes in this particular instance, I really can't. I have to report this forward. And if anyone ever reports a sexual harassment complaint or any kind of a complaint to me, the first one I would be talking to is Wes. Okay. He would be in the loop as well, but you don't have to tell them that just because it's Wes's company and he has the right to know that, I believe, right off the bat. I don't want to be investigating a sexual harassment complaint and Wes not know anything about it, and then it comes out and he's like, well,
and you can say too, I mean, it reminds me of people that we send a 1099 to. I like to tell them, I have to, it's the law. So, I mean, you can say, as just what you said, Laura, I respect this and the other, but we've been trained and legally, we have to take some action on this or something.
Correct. Just to keep you guys out of harm's way. That's the only reason. Well, and besides the fact that you guys really do need to know what happens next. $50,000. I wanted to write drawn on the bank of, you can't afford to be this stupid, but I didn't know if that would be condescending. But if someone comes to you and says that, you really can't. Okay. We have to apply the complaint process consistently too. So if someone comes to you, you need to take the complaint extremely seriously, no matter what you might think, or, this person whines about stuff all the time anyway, and do I really have to get involved, and da-da-da-da-da. Yes, you do. What'll happen is after you notify me, I'll get in touch with the employee, and I will keep you in the loop as much as I can. But sometimes I just take it and run with it, and then, I keep you in the loop, and then at the outcome, I'll tell you what's going to happen as well. I'll explain to you again what happens. We will follow up just like I told the other employees. If you tell me I need to go talk to X, Y, and Z, I talk to X, Y, and Z. If X says I need to go talk to A and B, I'm going to talk to A and B, because if this doesn't come out well and the employees have up to 3 years to file this complaint after the fact with the EEOC, an attorney, anybody, it just doesn't stop after the event. So if they don't think that we handled it correctly, they can move on. That's why we will discuss it with every employee, because what could happen is if Z tells me I need to go talk to A and B, and I only talk to A, but B had valuable information, that could not look well on us. So that's why I follow every lead until the trail is done. And then I discuss with all parties. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
What?
But even if they've left the company, it's still, they can be doing a complaint. So don't assume it's
correct.
Assume it's gone because they've left.
Correct. They can file an EEOC charge up to 3 years. You have 3 years from the date of the occurrence to file a complaint with the EEOC. And I tell you, if you call the EEOC, I'm a little jumping ahead here, but they have people that'll take the complaint for them over the phone. They can type it out on the computer and hit submit. It's not rocket science to file a complaint with the EEOC, and the better equipped our files are for this, the better off I can respond to that. Or they go to an attorney says, well, you might have a case here and I'll take a third, and if I can get you 50 grand and I take 30% of that, you still get Y, and it's no outlay to you in the beginning to see what's going to happen. Wouldn't you, if you thought that we didn't do it right? So that's what happens after I apply. Now, investigations can, they're sort of like a one thing at a time thing. I don't have a crystal ball that says every investigation follows all of these steps, because sometimes you can eliminate steps because it might be blatant or I couldn't substantiate it. And I will always say I could either substantiate or I could not substantiate the claim. That's the only verbiage that I use at the end of the complaint. Okay. Employers may be liable for supervisors harassing or discriminatory conduct unless the employer can show it took appropriate action. Is what we're doing today. We're doing the training. We're doing the development. Or the victim failed to take advantage of those measures. But in some cases, in a lot of cases, it isn't that the victim failed to take the measures. It's that the boss or whoever they reported it to didn't take the measure. So that would go right after Wes and rare patient voice. And like I've said, if someone comes to you immediately, come to me. Don't wait a day. Don't wait a minute after they leave your office. Or if they're still in your office, you can say, I need to get you in touch with HR. Do you mind if I call her now? Right? Because if they've told you, that means there's something going on and they're looking for help. They're just not understanding how to do it. And like I said, you can be personally sued. And that would be the greatest, most horrific thing I could think of any manager who is trying to do a great job with their employees that could happen to them. I'm going to ask you to write a statement. I'm going to document. I keep all those files together. I actually keep it in a separate folder, I keep it in the employees who filed a complaint, but I might keep it in a separate folder just because if in 3 years something has to be done, I need to find those files immediately. And you don't forget, don't make a judgment until we've gathered all the facts, because it's amazing how wild some of these harassment cases can take a turn. I had one recently where a young a young man was working in an establishment and he was being harassed by a coworker, and she was saying how nice his butt looked in the jeans, and just all kinds of things. And he was very young, but he when I talked to him, he led me to other places. And it also happened to be there were 2 supervisors involved, and they were having disparaging comments about one of the supervisors actually said, well, she must not have too much money because she wouldn't put those cheap nails on if she did. So you don't know how things can really take a twist. So bear in mind when you hand something over to me, a completely different animal could show up at the end. Take notes during the meeting with the employee, because I'm going to have you do that and sign and date it for me. And here's the cool thing. If they refuse to write a statement, don't worry about it, because I'm going to have your statement. And if they refuse to write a statement, it doesn't deter me from conducting the investigation. That just means they didn't want to write anything down. And then what I'll do is if the harasser is on your team, I might tell you that if we were physically, I might have you go get them or do something like that. But I will always have the harasser or the bullier write a statement for me and sign it and date it. And if they don't do it, it usually doesn't work in their favor, but they don't have to either, because I'm going to gather other facts that will be inside the investigation. We will have witnesses after they tell me their story. I'll have them write that down and sign it and date it for me as well. And we have to make sure that all of the statements are signed, and they have to have the printed name. I can't tell you, like the first time I did in any investigation, they would have this atrocious signature. And then when I had to pull it back out, I couldn't tell who that person was. So it's very important that we're clear to print, sign, and date. What retaliation means, I'm only going to go over 2 more of these with you because we discussed the other one. If as a supervisor, say that someone has filed a complaint against you, if you purposely make that person's work life more difficult by changing the work, the job assignment, location, or schedule, and it conflicts with their normal work routine, that can be considered retaliation. And doing anything that could discourage, where's the other one? Delivering a disciplinary action, counseling, or performance appraisal that downgrades or inaccurately portrays. Now, just because somebody filed a harassment complaint doesn't mean that we can't put them through the disciplinary process. But if you're going to do that, I really, really encourage you to talk to me first so that we can validate that what you're doing is correct, so that we don't get into trouble thinking that the employee thinking that you're retaliating with them at that time. So say an employee comes to you what is not retaliation after the complaint? It's basically everything that we talked about before. I just want to reiterate this to you. But if you are going to disciplinary or terminate somebody, please, please, please call me, get Wes involved, because we want to make sure that what we're doing can't be construed as we're getting rid of the problem instead of solving the problem. Okay. If they do file an EEO complaint, just like I said, we can do anything we want with them as long as we say that it's the best interest, it's for positive business outcomes. But there can be some gray area about that. So we can still do that kind of stuff. Say that we have an attendance policy and they filed an EEOC against me for something, and they've been late or absent during the policy, and I fire them because they did this inside the policy. That's fine. But it can't be for retaliation or non-discriminatory reasons. Protected activity. The EEOC prohibits retaliation against employees or applicants even if they feel like they've been harassed during during the application process, or they feel like they've been disqualified because of Title VII or the ADAA. Say, I feel like you didn't hire me because of my age, right? Let's see. Filing or being a witness, or say we have an EEOC complaint against us and one of our employees happens to be a witness. Be careful with that. Be aware. You don't have to be careful, but you have to be aware. Okay. Communicating with a supervisor or manager about employment discrimination, including harassment after the action is taken. Maybe another employee comes out and says, you know what? I've had the same thing happen to me and I'm coming to you now. If that happens, which it can, get a hold of me right away. Answering questions during an employer investigation of alleged harassment. If you're answering questions in good faith, you have nothing to worry about. If the employee follows orders that would result in discrimination, say I called Ben and I said, Ben, I want you to fire her because she did this, and you do that, that could leave you out of that problem because you're following my orders. But by the same token, I'll give you this as an example. I had a gentleman who was older, and he was a transportation manager, and his supervisor said during an ice storm, I need you to go out and move that truck. And the transportation manager says, no, have you seen the conditions out there? But his boss was so adamant that this truck be moved. And don't you know, the transportation manager went out, moved the truck, slipped on the ice, and almost broke his back. That's discrimination, basically based on their age, and the gentleman above him was making stupid decisions. But if he had said no and left it at that and not done it, we couldn't have done anything to him about that. If you're resisting sexual harassment or intervening to protect others, that's fine. If you put yourself out there and you say, no, you're not going to do this and I'm going to stop you, that's fine. Requesting an accommodation of a disability or a religious practice while we have that person is having EEOC activity. If they say, I've been injured and I need you to buy me one of those stand-up, sit-down desks, as long as there's a reasonable accommodation, we could do it. But if it would be out of the practice of something that Rare Patient Voice would do for everyone else, irregardless of whether they had an EEOC action against them, we wouldn't have to do that. So if that ever happens, all of this stuff you really do need to call me about. Or if they're asking managers or coworkers about salary information to uncover potentially discriminatory wages. In many states now, in Maryland and Connecticut and New Jersey and in California, we can't ask people, what did you make in your last job? We have to have in mind a salary, because that can be considered either discrimination against an older person or a woman or anybody, because traditionally women have always statistically made less money than men. So we have to have that idea about what we're willing to pay. We can't ask that anymore. After the fact, if we hire them, we can then go and say, what were you making at your last job? Or we could verify that through other means. It's not that we can't find out about it, but we can't say, okay, we'll give you $1 more than that, because that's not how that works anymore. And then the next slide, again, I just want to reinforce to you guys that no matter what the harasser's intent is, it's always how the victim will feel. So if you can't just say, well, that's just him or that's just her, we always have to have that investigation, and we always have to let it play out. This is one of those instances where as a manager or a leader, you are opinion neutral until the outcome is done. Okay. And that's just about it. Does anybody have any questions for me about your responsibilities?
Yeah, I got a question. Okay. Kind of rolling off of Laura's question earlier. So, in talking about how if an employee comes to us, we'll tell them, hey, I got to report this. At that point, when you speak with them, do they kind of have the power to kind of ask you, I really was just venting, I don't want to take this all the way through? Or is it something, tough luck, taking it all the way through?
You 100% of the time, I usually do take it all the way through, because if you're venting, there is something troubling you. Now, if it's a one-off and like, say I lost my mind and I don't know, I called you an obscenity because I was agitated, I would say, well, that's a one-off. But I would actually go back to the employee who was perpetrating it and get their statement and tell them that this has been filed against you, and you really do need to be cautious moving forward about how you're behaving. So I will have to talk to the harasser too, but that could give me closure. It depends on the case. Sometimes, if it's a one-off, that's one thing. If it's pervasive or something like that, it's a completely different animal. But either way, just let me know so that we can take the best steps that I have been educated to do to make sure that we handle it as compliant as possible.
Right. Because I'm just thinking, in terms of my team, I kind of A, want to cover myself, B, let them know, look, if you say anything along these lines, I have to report it. So know that now. and it's going to go all the way through. I want to let them know that.
Well, here's what I do. That's why I do this leadership version separately, because if you tell them that, it might dissuade them from coming to you and telling you. You don't want to preempt a no. You want them to just go about their business, and if something happens, then you do something. That's why this is separate. So I would prefer that you not go back to your team and say, hey, we just had that training. If you come to me, I have to report it. You might not even ever have a complaint come against you. And if they know that you are going to have to escalate it, that might prevent them. And then that could probably be used against you, because I was told by my boss that if I'm being harassed or anything, that he's going to have to do something before I ever did it. So that dissuaded me from doing it. And that could open yourself up. Is that clear?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Like I said, that's why the leadership version is just a little bit different, because I'm preparing you for the future. I'm preparing them too, but I'm keeping you out of harm's way. So that would be my recommendation. I know it's not the favorite training that I ever do, but it is the most serious training that we do, because there are people out there every day that this is happening to. And if we could prevent one person from getting harassed, sexually harassed, bullied, or mobbed, I think that we've had a good day.
Agreed.
All right. Well, thank you for your time. Send me an email that you participated in this in the leadership version, and we can put that in your file as well. And have a fabulous weekend. And if anything comes to light, and here's the thing, don't be afraid of these. They seem to be bigger than they really are in some people's minds. I mean, it's like any other investigation, and we do bring it to fruition. We do take care of it, and then we just move on with our day. I mean, it's something that it's just something that happens at work sometimes. But don't be afraid of it either. Embrace it and know that the harassment or whatever that you're preventing is actually helping somebody else.